So, we're going to talk about the philosopher Imre Lakatos and his absolutely groundbreaking ideas about science. But here's the thing. To really get his philosophy, you can't just look at the books. You have to understand the brutal, chaotic, and frankly terrifying world that made him. A world of war, revolution, and constant betrayal. This is really a story about how some of the most rational ideas can be born from the most traumatic experiences.
Before we dive into his life, just let this quote sink in for a second. It's a peek inside a mind that was forced to make impossible choices over and over again. And honestly, it's the key to understanding everything he would later write.
All right, let's get into it. The whole puzzle of Imre Lakatos really boils down to this huge contradiction. How does a man who is a fiery, committed Stalinist revolutionary somehow become a celebrated philosopher at the London School of Economics, a guy who champions the very idea of rational, open science? It doesn't seem to make any sense.
And to answer that question, we've got to go back to his early life in Hungary. You see, the things that happened to him there, they weren't just background noise. They were the fire, the crucible, that forged his entire way of thinking about the world.
Okay, just look at this timeline. The speed and the whiplash of it all is just staggering. In a little over a decade, Lakatos goes from being an anti-Nazi resistance fighter to a hardcore communist enforcer to a political prisoner locked up by the very same regime he helped create, and then finally, a refugee. For him, ideology was never some abstract classroom debate. It was literally life and death. And the most chilling example? In 1944, he convinced a young woman in his Marxist cell that it was her revolutionary duty to kill herself to avoid being captured and giving them up. He lived with that.
So you have to get this. Lakatos wasn't just some small part in the machine. No, he was a brilliant, passionate, true believer. But that very brilliance, his need to think critically and ask hard questions, well, that made him a huge threat to the rigid, absolute dogma that the Communist Party demanded. You know, this quote from Orwell's 1984 just nails it. Just like the character Syme, Lakatos was, well, he was too smart for his own good inside a totalitarian system. He was the kind of intellectual who could see the flaws and think a few steps ahead of the official party line. And in a regime that demands total blind conformity, that kind of insight is basically a death sentence. It was only a matter of time before the system he served turned on him. So, after he manages to flee Hungary in 1956, Lakatos makes his way to London. He leaves behind the literal battlefields of revolution for a new kind of war, an intellectual one. A battle over the very nature of science, progress, and how we know what we know. Now, when he gets to London, the world of philosophy of science is dominated by these two giants. On one side, you've got Karl Popper. His idea is that science moves forward by falsification, by constantly trying to prove our theories wrong. But Lakatos saw the problem right away. That's not really how scientists work. They don't just ditch a brilliant theory because of one bad experiment. Then on the other side, you've got Thomas Kuhn. He argued that science goes through these huge revolutionary paradigm shifts that are kind of irrational, almost like a religious conversion. And for Lakatos, who had seen where irrational belief could lead, that was just not a good enough answer. He needed something in the middle. And his solution was this brilliant middle ground. He set out to build a model for how science changes that was logical, but not fragile, that allowed for revolutions, but wasn't just based on mob rule. And this became his masterpiece, the methodology of scientific research programs. So his first big move was to change the subject. He said, hey, we're looking at this all wrong. We shouldn't be judging one single theory in isolation. Instead, he said, we need to look at what he called a research program. You can think of it like a whole scientific tradition, an entire family of related ideas that all evolving together and share the same core DNA. And then he breaks down what these programs are made of. Right at the center, you have the hardcore. These are the absolute, non-negotiable ideas. This is the fortress you defend no matter what. Wrapped around that is what he calls the protective belt of less vital hypotheses. This is where all the action happens. Scientists can tweak and change these ideas to deal with new data, which protects the core from taking direct hits. And finally, there's a positive heuristic, which is basically the battle plan. It tells scientists what to do next, how to develop the theory, and where to look for new discoveries.
And here it is. This is the absolute core of his entire philosophy. How can you tell a good, healthy research program from a bad, dying one? Well, a progressive program is on the offense. It's leading the charge. It doesn't just explain old stuff. It actually predicts new things nobody expected, and some of those predictions actually come true. A degenerating program, on the other hand, is always playing defense. It's not predicting anything new. All its energy is spent patching up holes and making excuses for why the world doesn't match the theory.
Just think about how powerful a progressive program is. Newtonian physics didn't just explain why apples fall, it predicted the exact date and time Halley's Comet would return. Wow. Or Einstein's relativity. It didn't just tweak our understanding of gravity, it made this totally bizarre prediction that starlight would actually bend as it passed the sun, something nobody had ever even thought to look for. That's a theory leading the way to discovering brand new facts about the universe.
So what does a degenerating program look like? Well, Lakatos had the perfect example from his own life, Marxism. He argued it started out with these huge, bold predictions, right? The working class would get poorer and poorer. The first revolutions would happen in the most developed countries. But the facts just didn't play along. The predictions failed. So what did its followers do? They didn't abandon the theory. They just kept adding patches, inventing new ad hoc explanations for why it didn't work, all to protect that hardcore from the harsh light of reality.
And this is where it all comes together. This isn't just some abstract, dusty philosophy about science. Lakatos' entire system is a direct result of, a reckoning with, the first half of his own life. I mean, think about it. Lakatos didn't need some clever thought experiment to imagine what a degenerating research program looked like. He had lived inside one. He saw with his own eyes an ideology that promised a perfect future but delivered a paranoid, brutal present. An ideology that was constantly scrambling to explain away its own failures. His philosophy was his way of putting a rational framework around the political disease he had managed to survive.
Which brings us right back to where we started, with this quote. His philosophy is just this personal rule, but scaled up. How do you decide when to keep defending a theory, to protect its hard core, and when do you have to admit that it's failing, that it's degenerating, and it's time to choose something else? It is the cool, rational reflection he was forced to learn just to stay alive, now turned into a tool for all of us.
So what did he leave us with? Lakatos gave us this incredible, sophisticated, middle path between Popper's impossibly strict rules and Kuhn's chaotic revolutions. He showed us that science is this grand competition between big research traditions. And maybe most importantly, he argued that the ultimate test of any worldview, whether it's scientific or political, isn't how neat it is. The real test is, does it grow? Is it dynamic? Can it successfully anticipate a future that's still unknown? He gave us a powerful toolkit for judging the big ideas of the past, from Newton to Einstein to Marx. But the real challenge he leaves for us is this. How can you take that same toolkit, that same cool reflection, and use it to judge the competing ideas, the great research programs that are fighting to shape our world, right here and right now?